The fork hit the plate with a sound that silenced everything. In that moment, time froze. My son's eyes, those eyes I thought I knew, locked with mine across the table. The dining room suddenly felt like a courtroom, and I was on trial. One simple photo was all it took. A photo I wasn't supposed to see. A photo that wasn't supposed to exist. But let me back up. You think you know your family, right? You believe you understand the people who share your blood, your name, your Sunday dinners. I did too. For 15 years, I believed I knew everything about my son. Everything that mattered. I was wrong. How many secrets are sitting at your dinner table right now? How many unspoken truths hover above your family photos? That night started like any other Tuesday. The same table, the same chairs, the same faces. The routine that gives you this false sense of permanence, of stability. The routine that whispers, everything is fine. Everything will always be fine. The spaghetti I had prepared was getting cold. My wife was talking about her day at work. Something about a new project. My daughter was texting under the table, thinking I couldn't see her. And my son was unusually quiet, scrolling through his phone. In our house, phones at dinner were allowed only for special occasions or emergencies. It was our one sacred rule. The dinner table was for connection, for family. But that night, I didn't say anything. Why didn't I say anything? Some silences cost more than others. What would you have done? Would you have called him out, asked him to put the phone away? Or would you have done what I did, let it slide, just this once? I remember the weight of the fork in my hand, the steam rising from the pasta, the sound of my wife's voice fading into background noise as I watched my son's expression change. He stopped scrolling. His face went pale. And then he looked up at me. Have you ever seen recognition dawn in someone's eyes? That moment when they realize their world is about to change? I saw it happen in my son's eyes that night. And I knew before he said a word, that whatever he had seen on that phone was about to shatter our carefully constructed life. Dad, he said. Just that. Just, Dad. But the way he said it, like he was testing if the word still fit, if I was still the person he thought I was. The silence that followed felt eternal. My wife stopped mid-sentence. My daughter looked up from her phone. The ceiling fan kept turning, casting slow, rhythmic shadows across our faces. What is this? He turned his phone around. And there it was. A photo I hadn't seen in 15 years. A photo I thought was gone forever. A photo of a different life. My different life. Before them. Before this family. Have you ever felt your entire identity collapse? Not gradually, not over time, but in an instant? One moment you're a father having dinner with his family, and the next, you're someone else entirely. Someone with a past that's suddenly, violently present. The spaghetti grew cold. The fork in my hand started to shake. And my son's eyes, those eyes that once looked at me with nothing but trust, now held something new. Something I'd never seen there before. Doubt. I put down my fork. The sound it made against the plate seemed to echo through our house like a gunshot. And in that moment, I knew there was no going back. The secret I'd buried for 15 years was sitting on our dinner table now, displayed on my son's phone screen for everyone to see. Would you have denied it? Would you have tried to explain? Or would you have done what I did? The truth is, some secrets don't just belong to us. Some secrets, once revealed, change everyone they touch. And my secret was about to change everything. Before the photo, before that Tuesday dinner, we were what people call a perfect family. The kind neighbors envy. The kind strangers smile at in supermarkets. My wife Sarah with her patient smile. My daughter Emma with her father's eyes. And my son. My son Michael with his quiet determination that reminded me of myself at his age. We had the house with the basketball hoop in the driveway. The dog that barked too much when the mailman came. The calendar on the fridge covered in soccer practices, dance recitals, and dentist appointments. We had it all. At least, that's what it looked like from the outside. Every Sunday, I'd make pancakes. It was our tradition. Michael would always ask for chocolate chips in his. Emma wanted blueberries. Sarah would watch us from over her coffee mug, and I'd catch her smiling sometimes, that private smile that said, "This is ours. This is good." And it was good. I need you to understand that. It was good, and it was real. But beneath it all ran a current of something else. Something I'd worked so hard to forget that sometimes I almost believed I had. Almost. There would be moments, brief, fleeting moments, when something would trigger a memory. The scent of a particular cologne in a crowded elevator, a song playing in a grocery store, a name mentioned casually in conversation. In those moments, I'd feel it again. The weight of the secret I carried, the other life I'd left behind, the people I'd left behind. Have you ever reinvented yourself so completely that your past feels like someone else's memory? Someone else's mistake? I met Sarah 16 years ago at a conference in Chicago. I was there as James Wilson, marketing executive, recently relocated from the West Coast. It was a new name, a new job, a new beginning. The old me was gone. Legally, officially gone. The paperwork had been filed. The loose ends had been tied. Or so I thought. Sarah never knew the man I was before. She fell in love with James Wilson. She married James Wilson. She had 2 beautiful children with James Wilson. But James Wilson wasn't real. Do you know what it's like to answer to a name that isn't yours? To celebrate a birthday that isn't the day you were born? To tell stories about a childhood that never happened? At first, it's exhausting. You're constantly performing, constantly vigilant. One slip and the entire facade comes crashing down. But over time, the lie becomes comfortable. The details become second nature. The past begins to fade, until you almost believe it yourself. I became James Wilson so completely that some days I wouldn't think about my old life at all. I'd go whole weeks, months even, without remembering. I'd coach Michael's soccer team, help Emma with her science project, make love to my wife, all without the shadow of my past darkening a single moment. But it was always there, waiting. A time bomb with no visible timer. What would you do if you could erase your past? Would you do it? Would you build a new life on top of the ruins of the old one and pray that the foundation holds? I did. For 15 years I did. And for 15 years, it worked. My family knew me as the man I had become, not the man I had been. They knew the carefully curated stories I shared, the selective truths, the partial history. They knew James Wilson, devoted husband, loving father, successful businessman. They didn't know the other name, the other city, the other family. Yes, the other family. The one in the photo that now sat on my son's phone screen, staring up at us from the dinner table like an uninvited guest. How did he find it? How did this fragment of my past life survive when I'd been so careful to destroy every trace? These questions raced through my mind as I sat there, fork suspended midair, my family waiting for an explanation I wasn't prepared to give. Because how do you tell the people you love most in the world that everything they know about you is built on a foundation of lies? Who are they? Michael asked, his voice steady but his hand trembling as he held the phone. I could feel Sarah's eyes on me, questioning, concerned. Emma had stopped texting, her attention now fully on the unfolding drama. The dog whined softly from his bed in the corner, sensing the tension filling our dining room like smoke. It's an old photo, I said finally, the words feeling inadequate even as they left my mouth. From before. Before what? Michael pressed. Before us? Before us. Such a simple phrase. Such an impossible divide. I looked at the photo again. A younger version of myself stood on a beach, arm around a woman who wasn't Sarah. A little boy, maybe 4 years old, sat on my shoulders. His smile was wide, carefree. We looked happy. We were happy. Until we weren't. Yes, I admitted. Before us. Sarah put down her fork. Her face had that carefully composed expression she wore when she was processing something difficult. James, she said quietly. What's going on? James. Not my name. Not really. But I'd answered to it for so long that it felt more authentic than the name I was born with. I need a minute, I said, pushing back from the table. I need a minute. I walked to the kitchen, braced my hands against the counter, and tried to breathe. Through the doorway, I could hear them whispering, speculating. My family, my second family, trying to make sense of what they'd just seen. The past doesn't stay buried. Remember that. No matter how deep you dig the hole, no matter how carefully you tamp down the earth, the truth finds a way to surface. Like water, like air, like life itself. I splashed cold water on my face and looked out the window at our backyard. The swing set we'd assembled when the kids were small. The garden Sarah had planted last spring. The treehouse I'd built with Michael 2 summers ago. Our hands working side by side, hammering, measuring, creating something together. All of it real. All of it built on a lie. Have you ever realized that your entire life is both true and false at the same time? When I returned to the dining room, they were waiting. 3 faces I loved more than anything in the world, looking at me like I was suddenly a stranger. "That's David," I said, pointing to the little boy in the photo. He would be 19 now. The silence that followed was deafening. I could almost hear the gears turning in their minds, calculating, realizing. "You have another son?" Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. "Had," I corrected, the word like ash in my mouth. I had another son. Michael's expression changed then, from accusation to confusion. What happened to him? What happened to them? What happened to them? How could I possibly answer that question? How could I compress the collapse of an entire life into a dinner table explanation? "There was an accident," I began, each word carefully chosen. "David was hurt, badly hurt. His mother ain't blamed me. She had reason to. Emma, always perceptive, noticed what I wasn't saying. Is that why you changed your name? Why we never talk about your life before Mom?" Sharp. Too sharp. My daughter had always seen more than I wanted her to. "Part of it," I admitted. "It's complicated." "Complicated?" Michael's voice rose. "You have had another family, another son, and you never told us. You never told me." The betrayal in his eyes cut deeper than any knife could. 15 years of trust, eroding in minutes. "I wanted to protect you," I said. "All of you." "Protect us from what?" Sarah asked, her voice stronger now, demanding answers she deserved long ago. "From the truth. From the man I used to be. From the mistake that cost a child his future." The words caught in my throat. 15 years of silence had made them rusty, difficult to form. After the accident, there were investigations, questions about what happened, about my role in it. I saw the shift in Sarah's expression, from confusion to dawning horror. "James," she said, and I could hear the effort it took to keep her voice steady. "What are you saying?" What was I saying? That I ran away? That I abandoned a family that needed me? That I hid from consequences that were rightfully mine to bear? Or something worse? The timer on the oven beeped, an absurd intrusion of normalcy into this moment of unraveling. Tuesday night, dinner time. Garlic bread forgotten in the oven. Some routines continue even as your world falls apart. "I need to know everything," Sarah said after I'd turned off the oven. Her voice was calm but firm, the same voice she used when negotiating contracts at work. Not the edited version, not the simplified version. Everything. Michael sat rigid in his chair, the phone still displaying that damning photo. Emma had pulled her knees to her chest, making herself small, the way she did when she was anxious. My family, bracing for impact. "My name wasn't always James Wilson," I began, the confession like stepping off a cliff. "I was born Daniel Mercer." Daniel Mercer. How strange it felt to say that name aloud after so many years. Like calling out to a ghost. I met Rebecca when we were both in college. We married young. Had David when we were 23. The faces around the table were utterly still, absorbing each detail like it might be a clue to a mystery they hadn't known existed until tonight. We lived in Oregon. I worked for a construction company. Rebecca was a teacher. We had a good life. Simple sentences. Facts without emotion. It was the only way I could get through this. "Until the accident," Sarah prompted gently. "Until the accident. The pivot point around which my entire existence had turned." I nodded, my mouth suddenly dry. "David was 6. I was supposed to pick him up from swim practice, but I was running late. There was a client meeting that went long, and my phone died, so Rebecca didn't know." The memories came flooding back, not as the dull, distant ache I'd grown accustomed to, but sharp and vivid. The chlorine smell of the indoor pool, the squeak of my shoes on the wet tile, The lifeguard's face when I arrived, confused because David wasn't there. He got tired of waiting, decided to walk home alone. It was only 3 blocks, but to get there, he had to cross Riverside Drive. My voice faltered. I felt Sarah's hand cover mine on the table. Despite everything, despite the lies she was just beginning to uncover, her instinct was still to comfort me. I didn't deserve it. He was hit by a car. The driver didn't see him until it was too late. Emma made a small sound, part gasp, part sob. Michael's face had gone completely pale. Was he killed? He asked, his voice barely audible. I shook my head. No, but he suffered a traumatic brain injury. He was in a coma for weeks. When he woke up, he wasn't the same David anymore. He couldn't walk, couldn't feed himself, couldn't recognize his own mother sometimes. The weight of the silence that followed was crushing. I could see them trying to process it, trying to reconcile the man they knew with this story that seemed to belong to someone else entirely. Rebecca blamed me. She was right to. If I'd been on time, if my phone hadn't died, if I'd just called from the client's office. So many ifs. A lifetime of them. We tried to make it work. For a year we tried. But the medical bills were overwhelming. Our insurance wasn't enough. The tension between us grew until we could barely speak to each other without fighting. And David needed more care than we could provide at home. I remembered those days in fragments. The sterile smell of the hospital, the constant beeping of monitors, Rebecca's face growing more hollow with each passing week, the way her eyes would avoid mine when we passed in the hallway of our home. Eventually, Rebecca filed for divorce. She took David to live with her parents in Seattle, where there was a specialized care facility. I stayed in Oregon, working extra shifts to send money for his treatment. It sounded so reasonable when I put it that way. So responsible. The truth was far uglier. But that's not why you changed your name, Sarah said quietly. It wasn't a question. She always could see through me. No, I admitted. That came later. Michael leaned forward. What aren't you telling us? What wasn't I telling them? Only the worst part. Only the reason I'd run so far and hidden so completely. There was an investigation, I said finally. The facility where David was receiving care. There were concerns about some of the practices there. Some of the treatments they were using on the children. What kind of treatments? Emma asked, her voice small. I closed my eyes. Experimental ones. Ones that weren't fully approved. Ones that promised results when nothing else had worked. And you knew? Sarah's voice had changed now. Cooler, more distant. Did I know? Did I suspect? Did I choose not to ask questions because I was desperate for my son to improve, desperate enough to ignore the red flags? I should have known, I said finally. I signed the papers. I paid for the treatments. And when things went wrong, when David got worse instead of better, they needed someone to blame. The dining room had grown cold, or maybe it was just me. The pasta congealed on our plates, forgotten. Outside, darkness had fallen completely. Our reflection in the window looked like a painting of a family, frozen, fragile. What happened to David? Michael asked. His initial shock had hardened into something else now, a determination to understand. After the treatments went wrong, I'd asked myself that question 1,000 times over the years. What happened to David? What became of my first son? The boy I'd abandoned in all but financial obligation? He survived, I said. But the damage, it was significant, permanent. The word hung in the air between us. Permanent. No going back. No fixing what was broken. The facility closed down after the investigation. Most of the children were transferred to other care centers. Rebecca took David back to her parents' home. They converted their ground floor into a space for him, hired full-time nurses. And you? Sarah's question was soft but pointed. Where were you during all of this? Where was I? Running, hiding, transforming, becoming someone new, someone without the weight of that failure on his shoulders. I was a coward, I admitted, the words like glass in my throat. When the investigation started, when they began looking at who had authorized the treatments, who had paid for them, I panicked. Emma's eyes widened. You ran away? Put so simply, it sounded even worse. But that's exactly what I had done. Yes, I said. I consulted a lawyer first, set up a trust fund for David's care, everything I had then, plus automatic transfers from my new accounts. But then I disappeared, changed my name, moved across the country, started over. As James Wilson, Michael said flatly. As James Wilson, I echoed. A year later, I met your mother at that conference in Chicago. Sarah's face was unreadable now. I wondered if she was mentally revisiting our entire relationship, our meeting, our courtship, our wedding, searching for signs she had missed, clues to the lie at the heart of it all. Did they ever find you? She asked. The investigators? I shook my head. The case eventually closed. There weren't criminal charges, just civil suits against the facility. But I couldn't take the risk, couldn't face Rebecca, couldn't face what I'd done, or failed to do, for David. So you just erased them, Michael said, his voice hard. Erased your real son and started over with a new family. With me. The accusation hit like a physical blow. No, Michael. It wasn't like that. You, Emma, your mother, you're not replacements. You're not a do-over. What we have, what we've built together, it's real. Is it? He challenged. How can anything be real when it's built on a lie this big? I had no answer for that. None that would satisfy him. None that satisfied me. How did you find that photo? I asked instead, nodding toward his phone. Michael's laugh was bitter, adult in its cynicism. Would you believe TikTok? Some viral trend about finding your doppelgangers online. I put your name in, just for fun. Nothing came up for James Wilson, but there was this random old article about a Daniel Mercer who looked exactly like you. And when I clicked through to the source, of course, the digital age, where nothing truly disappears, where the past is always just a search away. The article was about the facility, Michael continued, about the investigations. Your name was only mentioned once as one of the parents involved, but there was this photo, a family photo they'd used to show how normal everything seemed before the scandal broke. The photo that now sat on our dinner table, the ghost of my past life staring up at us. Does he know about us? Emma asked suddenly. David, does he know he has a brother and sister? The question pierced me. In all my careful arrangements, my financial provisions, my legal maneuvering, I had never once considered that. Never thought about what David might have wanted or needed beyond money for his care. I don't know, I admitted. I don't think so. Rebecca and we haven't spoken in 15 years. 15 years, Sarah repeated, as if measuring the span of our marriage against the span of my deception. They were, of course, identical. The silence that followed was heavy with questions no one seemed ready to ask. How much of me was real? How much was performance? If I could leave one family behind, what was to stop me from doing it again? I looked at the faces around the table. My wife, my daughter, my son, my second chance, my redemption. At least, that's how I'd seen them. Now I wondered how they saw me. I think, Sarah said finally, each word careful and deliberate, that we need to take a break from this conversation. Process what we've learned. Separately. She stood, her dinner untouched, and looked at me with eyes I could no longer read. I'll be upstairs. Emma, Michael, I think you should both go to your rooms for now. My family rose from the table like survivors from a shipwreck, dazed, disoriented, fundamentally altered by what they'd experienced. Only I remained seated, the captain who had steered us into the storm. The house grew quiet, too quiet. I sat alone at the dining table for what felt like hours, the abandoned dinner congealing before me, the photo on Michael's phone still visible where he'd left it. A moment frozen in time, a happier time, before everything fell apart. Eventually, I began clearing the table, scraping untouched food into the garbage, loading the dishwasher, wiping surfaces, mechanical actions, familiar routines that required no thought, no emotional engagement. I wondered what was happening upstairs. Was Sarah packing a bag? Were Michael and Emma texting each other from their rooms, comparing notes about their fraud of a father? Were they Googling Daniel Mercer right now, uncovering all the details I'd failed to share? The silence felt like a sentence being passed. When the kitchen was spotless, cleaner than it had been in months, I poured myself a bourbon and went to sit on the back porch. The night was cool, stars visible between scattered clouds. Our yard looked different in the darkness, less defined, more mysterious. Like me, I supposed. How many nights had I sat here, watching Emma push Michael on the swing, listening to Sarah hum as she gardened? How many barbecues, birthday parties, lazy Sunday afternoons had this space witnessed? All those memories, were they invalidated now? Tainted by the lie at their foundation? The bourbon burned going down. I welcomed the sensation. Something real, something honest. My phone buzzed in my pocket. For a wild moment, I thought it might be Rebecca, as if my confession had somehow traveled across the country to reach her. But the notification was mundane, a reminder about Michael's college tour this weekend. Would that still happen now? Would anything in our carefully planned future unfold as expected? I heard the sliding door open behind me. Sarah stepped onto the porch, wrapped in the cardigan I'd given her last Christmas. Her face was composed, but her eyes were red-rimmed. She sat in the chair beside me, not touching, not speaking, just present. After several minutes, she broke the silence. I keep thinking about what you must have gone through. The guilt, the fear, the loss. Of all the reactions I had anticipated, sympathy had not been among them. That doesn't excuse what I did, I said. No, she agreed. It doesn't. But it helps me understand it. A little. She turned to look at me directly. I need to know one thing, James. Or Daniel, or whoever you are. Are there any more secrets? Anything else you've kept from me that I'm going to discover later when it's too late to prepare myself? The question was fair. More than fair. No, I said. You know everything now. The worst of me. She nodded, processing this. The children are devastated, especially Michael. Of course they were. In a single evening, I had transformed from the father they trusted into a stranger with a hidden past. A liar. A coward who had abandoned his first child when things got difficult. What can I do? I asked, desperation bleeding into my voice. How do I fix this? Sarah's laugh was sad, tired. I don't know that you can fix it, James. Some broken things stay broken. The words hit me like a physical blow. Some broken things stay broken. Like David. Like my first family. Like, perhaps, this one. But, Sarah continued, her voice softer now, you can try to be honest from this point forward. No more hiding. No more half-truths. I nodded, clinging to this small hope like a drowning man to driftwood. Michael wants to know about his brother, she said. The real David, not just the tragedy. What he was like. What you did together. Brother. The word sent a shock through me. Of course, Michael and David were brothers. Half-brothers, technically, but brothers nonetheless. Family. Connected by blood and by the man who had fathered them both. And Emma? I asked. Emma's processing in her own way. You know how she is. She needs time to think things through. But she asked if David likes to draw, like she does. If that might be something they have in common. The question broke my heart. David at 6 had loved to draw. Trucks and dinosaurs and superhero versions of himself. What did he like now? What was he capable of now? I had no idea. There's something else, Sarah said, her voice changing subtly. After you came outside, Michael did some more searching. He found recent information about David and Rebecca. My heart stuttered. What kind of information? Sarah's eyes met mine, and I saw something there I couldn't quite interpret. Rebecca has a social media account. Not very active, but there are posts about David. Updates about his condition. Photos. Photos? The word came out as barely a whisper. Sarah nodded. David is 19 now. He's in a wheelchair. He appears to have significant disabilities. But James, he's alive. He's there. And his mother has been documenting their life together all these years. The revelation hit me like a tidal wave. All this time, I'd held David frozen in my mind. Perpetually 6 years old. Perpetually broken by my failure. But he had continued existing. Growing. Living a life I knew nothing about. Michael wants to reach out to them, Sarah said quietly. And with those words, I knew the collision of my past and present was now inevitable. Morning came with harsh clarity. None of us had slept much. We gathered in the kitchen like survivors of some natural disaster, cautious, wary, fundamentally changed by what we'd experienced. Sarah made coffee. Emma picked at a bowl of cereal. Michael stood by the window, scrolling through his phone again. Looking at David, I assumed. Looking at the brother he'd never known he had until yesterday. I found their address, he said without preamble. They still live in Seattle, same house. The casual way he delivered this information, as if we were discussing a vacation destination rather than the site of my greatest failure, sent a chill through me. Michael? Sarah began, her tone cautioning. What? He challenged. Don't we deserve to know them? Don't they deserve to know about us? The question hung in the air between us. Deserve. Such a complicated word. What did any of us truly deserve? It's not that simple, I said finally. Rebecca? She has every reason to hate me, to never want to see me again. This isn't about you. Michael shot back, his voice sharp. This is about David, my brother. Don't you think he might want to know he has siblings? Family beyond the people who were left to care for him when his father disappeared? Each word was a precision strike, designed to wound, and they found their mark perfectly. You don't understand what it was like, I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. The guilt, the blame, the constant reminder of what I'd failed to prevent. So you ran away? Michael interrupted. Created a whole new identity? Started a replacement family? You are not a replacement. The words came out louder than I intended, echoing in the kitchen. None of you are replacements. You're my family. I love you. But you loved them first, Emma said quietly. It wasn't an accusation, just a statement of fact. And you left them. The simplicity of her assessment cut deeper than Michael's anger. Yes, I admitted. I left them. It's the worst thing I've ever done. The thing I can never take back or make right. You could try, Michael said, his voice softer now, but no less intense. You could at least try. Could I? After 15 years of silence, of absence, could I possibly re-enter their lives without causing more pain? I'm going to email Rebecca, Michael announced. Today, I'm going to tell her who I am, who we are. Panic surged through me. Michael, wait. Please. Let's think this through. I have thought it through, all night. That's my brother out there. My blood. Don't I have a right to know him? The determination in his eyes reminded me painfully of myself at his age. That certainty, that sense of moral clarity that only the young possess. What would you even say to her? I asked, trying a different approach. How would you explain? Michael held up his phone. I've already drafted it. I'm just telling her the truth. That I recently discovered my father used to be Daniel Mercer. That I found out about David. That if she's willing, I'd like to connect somehow. The simplicity of it terrified me. All my careful years of separation, of compartmentalization, undone by a single email. Michael, Sarah intervened, her voice gentle but firm. I understand how you feel, but this is a lot for everyone to process. Maybe we should take some time before making contact. How much time, Mom? Another 15 years? Michael's frustration was palpable. David is 19. I'm 17. We've already lost our entire childhoods together because of Dad's lies. How much more time should we lose? His logic was devastating in its straightforwardness. What could any of us say to counter it? What if they don't want to hear from us? Emma asked, her voice small. What if they hate us because of what Dad did? A valid fear. One I'd carried myself. Then at least we tried, Michael said simply. At least we didn't hide from the truth like Dad did. Another direct hit. I winced. I think, Sarah said carefully, that Michael has a point. This secret has already caused enough damage. Maybe it's time for honesty, whatever the consequences. I looked at her surprised. You think he should contact them? She met my gaze steadily. I think secrets have a way of coming out eventually. We've already seen that. Better on our terms than by accident, don't you think? The logic was sound, but the prospect filled me with dread. Rebecca's face, the last time I'd seen it, twisted with grief and rage, flashed before my eyes. The accusations she'd hurled at me. The promises of what would happen if I ever came near David again. What if, I began, then faltered. What if contacting them causes more harm than good? What if it reopens wounds that have finally started to heal? What if it doesn't? Michael countered. What if David has wondered about you all these years? What if he deserves to know the truth? That you didn't just abandon him, that you've been sending money, that you have other children who want to know him. The possibility hadn't occurred to me. Had David asked about me as he grew older? Had he wondered why I disappeared? What had Rebecca told him? I'm sending the email, Michael said, his tone final. Right now. Before I could protest further, his thumb tapped the screen. Sent. Just like that, the barrier between my two lives began to dissolve. 3 days passed. 3 days of unbearable tension. 3 days of jumping every time a phone buzzed or an email notification appeared. 3 days of wondering whether Rebecca had received Michael's message, whether she had read it, what she might be thinking or planning in response. Life continued in its mechanical way. Sarah went to work. The kids went to school. I called in sick, unable to focus on anything beyond the ticking time bomb that was Michael's email. Would Rebecca respond? Would she ignore it? Would she reach out to authorities, report that Daniel Mercer, the man who had disappeared 15 years ago amid investigations into a medical scandal, had been found? The possibilities multiplied in my mind, each more anxiety-inducing than the last. On the third evening, as we sat in the living room pretending to watch a movie none of us was actually following, Michael's phone chimed. He glanced at the screen, then went completely still. It's her, he said, his voice suddenly small, uncertain. Rebecca, she replied. The air seemed to leave the room all at once. Sarah muted the TV. Emma set down her sketch pad. I gripped the arms of my chair so tightly my knuckles went white. What does she say? Sarah asked gently. Michael's eyes scanned the screen, his expression unreadable. She wants to talk. On Zoom, tomorrow night. All of us. All of us. The words echoed in my head. Not just Michael. Not just the kids. All of us, including me, the man who had abandoned her and her son 15 years ago. Did she mention David? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Michael nodded. She says he knows about the email. That he wants to meet us, too. That he's... He paused, swallowing hard. That he's excited to learn he has siblings. Excited. The word hit me like a physical blow. All these years I'd imagined only anger, only resentment from the family I'd left behind. I'd never considered the possibility of excitement. Will you do it? Emma asked, looking at me. Will you talk to them? Would I? Could I face Rebecca after all this time? Could I look into the eyes of the son I'd abandoned and ask for? What? Forgiveness seemed too much to hope for. Understanding? Even that felt beyond reach. I don't know if I can, I admitted, the words scraping my throat. You have to, Michael said firmly. You owe them that much. You owe us that much. He was right, of course. But knowing what was right and finding the courage to do it were entirely different matters. What if, I began, then stopped. What if what? What if David hated me? What if Rebecca had spent 15 years poisoning him against the father who had disappeared when he needed him most? I wouldn't blame her if she had. It would be no less than I deserved. What if he's disappointed? I finished finally, the real fear emerging. What if he expects something from me that I can't give? What if seeing me only causes him more pain? Then that's his choice to make, Sarah said quietly. Not yours. You took that choice away from him once already. The truth of her words silenced any further protest I might have made. I'll set up the call, Michael said, already typing a response. Tomorrow at 7. That gives us all day to prepare. Prepare. As if any amount of preparation could ready me for coming face to face with the family I'd abandoned, the next day passed in a blur of anxiety and anticipation. I couldn't eat, couldn't focus, couldn't think beyond the looming confrontation. By the time evening arrived, I felt physically ill with dread. Michael set up his laptop on the dining room table, the same table where this had all begun just days ago. The symmetry wasn't lost on me. We gathered around it like mourners at a grave, solemn and silent. "It's time," Michael said, checking his watch. His finger hovered over the join button. "Ready?" No, I wasn't ready. Would never be ready. "Yes," I said anyway. The screen flickered, connected, and there they were. Rebecca sat in what appeared to be a living room, her hair shorter and streaked with gray, but her face instantly recognizable. The years had carved new lines around her eyes, her mouth. She looked older, wearier, but composed. And beside her, in a specialized wheelchair, was David, my first son, my greatest regret. 19 now, no longer the 6-year-old boy from my memories. His body was thin, slumped slightly to one side. His features had matured, showing traces of the man he might have become under different circumstances. But his eyes were alert, engaged, and they fixed on me with an intensity that made my heart stutter. "Hello, Daniel," Rebecca said, her voice steady but cool. "It's been a long time." Daniel, not James. In her world, I had never become James Wilson. I had always remained Daniel Mercer, the man who had failed them. "Hello, Rebecca," I managed, my own voice barely audible. "Hello, David." David's face changed then, a smile spreading slowly across features that seemed to struggle with the expression, but it was unmistakably a smile. "Dad," he said, the word slurred but recognizable. "Found you." And with those two simple words, my carefully constructed world completed its collapse. "David has been asking about you for years," Rebecca said, her voice measured, controlled. "I told him the truth, that you left after his accident, that you couldn't handle what happened." Each word was a verdict, a sentence, and entirely deserved. "I never told him you changed your name," she continued. "I never knew that part myself until I got Michael's email." Michael sat beside me, rigid with tension. Emma on my other side, her hand gripping Sarah's under the table. My current family facing my former one across the digital divide. "How much," I began, then had to clear my throat to continue. "How much does David remember? From before?" Rebecca's expression softened slightly, the first crack in her armor. "Not much. The brain injury affected his long-term memory. He remembers fragments, feelings more than specific events." I nodded, absorbing this. In a way, David had been spared the full measure of my betrayal. Small mercies. "But I've shown him photos," Rebecca added. "Told him stories. He knows who you are. Who I was, I wanted to correct. But that would be another evasion, another lie. Daniel Mercer still existed, inside me, underneath the identity I'd constructed to replace him. "David," I said, addressing my first son directly for the first time. "I'm sorry. For leaving. For not being there. For everything." Inadequate words. Pathetically inadequate. But they were all I had. David's response surprised me. "It's okay," he said, the words slightly slurred but clear enough to understand. "Mom said you were scared." Scared. Such a simple word for the complex tangle of emotions that had driven me away. Fear, yes, but also shame, guilt, self-loathing, the coward's cocktail. I admitted, but that's no excuse. "The money helped," Rebecca interjected. "I want you to know that. The trust fund, it paid for treatments, equipment, caregivers. It made a difference." Was she offering me absolution? Or just stating facts? I couldn't tell. "It was the least I could do," I said. "It doesn't make up for not being there." "No," she agreed. "It doesn't." Michael leaned forward then, addressing David directly. "I'm Michael, your brother, and this is Emma, your sister, and Sarah, our mom. Brother, sister. Such simple terms for such complicated relationships." David smiled again, that effortful, lopsided smile that somehow conveyed more genuine emotion than any polished expression could have. "Brothers," he repeated, the word clearly significant to him. Always wanted a brother. The simplicity of his joy in this discovery, uncomplicated by the layers of betrayal and deceit that clouded everything for the rest of us, was humbling. "I always wanted a brother too," Michael said, his voice thick with emotion. "I just didn't know I already had one." Emma spoke next, her usual shyness overcome by curiosity. "Do you like to draw, David?" "I love drawing." David nodded enthusiastically. "Art therapy, Tuesdays. I paint." "He's quite good," Rebecca added, her expression softening further when she looked at her son. "He works with an art therapist who helps him adapt techniques to his capabilities. He's had pieces displayed in local exhibitions." Pride. Unmistakable maternal pride. Despite everything, the accident, the divorce, raising a child with significant disabilities alone, Rebecca had found joy in David's achievements, had helped him build a life with meaning and purpose, while I had run away, started over, tried to bury the past under layers of reinvention. The contrast between us had never been clearer. "I'd love to see your artwork," Emma said earnestly. "Maybe we could exchange some pieces." David nodded again, clearly pleased by the suggestion. The conversation continued, awkward, halting, fraught with undercurrents of unresolved pain, but also touched with moments of genuine connection. Michael and David discovering shared interests in sci-fi movies, Emma promising to send David some of her sketches, Sarah and Rebecca exchanging surprisingly civil observations about raising teenagers, and me, watching it all unfold with a growing sense that I was witnessing something I had no right to be part of, a reconciliation I had done nothing to earn. As the call neared its end, Rebecca addressed me directly again. "Daniel, or James, whatever you call yourself now, I need you to understand something. I didn't agree to this call for your benefit. I did it for David, and for your other children who deserve to know their brother." I nodded, accepting the boundary she was drawing. "I understand. David has asked about you over the years, wondered why you never visited. I've told him it was complicated, that sometimes adults make mistakes they can't take back. I never told him you started a new family. I didn't know myself. That will be for you to explain, if you choose to have a relationship with him going forward. If." The conditional hung in the air between us. "Would that be possible?" I asked, hardly daring to hope. "A relationship with David?" Rebecca's expression was unreadable. "That's not entirely up to me. David is 19 now. His cognitive abilities are limited in some ways, but he makes his own decisions about who he wants in his life." She turned to her son. "My son. Our son. David, would you like to talk to your father again sometime? And your brother and sister?" David's face lit up. "Yes. Tomorrow?" The eagerness in his voice, the complete absence of the resentment he had every right to feel, broke something inside me. Tears I had held back throughout the entire conversation finally spilled over. "I would like that very much," I managed to say through the tightness in my throat. "But maybe not tomorrow. Soon, though. Very soon." Rebecca nodded once, accepting this answer. "I'll email you, Michael," she said. "We can arrange another call." And with a few awkward goodbyes, the connection ended. The screen went dark, leaving the five of us sitting around the dining room table in silence, forever changed by what had just transpired. "He seems nice," Emma said finally, her voice small but steady. "David, he seems really nice." "He does," Sarah agreed, her hand still holding Emma's, her other now reaching for mine across the table. I took it, grateful beyond words for this gesture of connection, when she had every right to withdraw from me completely. "What happens now?" Michael asked, looking directly at me. The anger that had fueled him for the past few days had faded, replaced by something more complicated. Uncertainty, perhaps. Or hope. What did happen now? How did we move forward from here? How did we integrate these two families, these separate lives, into something new? "I don't know exactly," I admitted. "But I think it starts with truth. No more hiding, no more running away." Sarah squeezed my hand gently. "One day at a time," she said. "That's all any of us can do. One day at a time. Starting with this day, when my past and present had finally collided, forcing me to face the consequences of choices made 15 years ago. Whatever came next wouldn't be easy, wouldn't be comfortable, might not even be possible. But for the first time in 15 years, I was willing to try, to face what I had done, to attempt, however inadequately, to make amends. Not to erase the past, that was impossible, but perhaps to build a future that acknowledged it, incorporated it, learned from it. A future that included both my families, both my sons, all my children, if they would have me. 1 year later, we gather around a different table, a larger one, a table that holds both my families, past and present, first and second, united not by forgiveness, that would be too simple, too neat, but by something more complex, by choice, by effort, by the slow, painful work of building connections across the chasm of betrayal. Rebecca sits at one end, still reserved with me but warm with Sarah, with Michael, with Emma. David beside her, his wheelchair adapted to fit comfortably at the table. My children, all 3 of them, clustered together, sharing jokes, stories, the easy intimacy of siblings who have discovered a bond that transcends the circumstances of their connection. Sarah beside me, her hand occasionally finding mine under the table, not in the unconscious way of our life before, but deliberately, intentionally, a choice she makes, again and again, to remain connected despite knowing the worst of me, and me. Still James to some, Daniel to others, both names answering to the same flawed man. The past year hasn't been easy. There were therapists, individual and family, lawyers to address the legal complications of my dual identity, hours of painful conversations, excavating truths long buried, moments of progress followed by setbacks, breakthroughs undermined by old patterns reasserting themselves. But we persisted, all of us for different reasons. Rebecca for David's sake, Sarah for our families, Michael and Emma for the brother they'd discovered, David for the simple joy of connection, and me for the chance at redemption I didn't deserve but desperately wanted, the opportunity to face what I had done rather than running from it, the slim possibility that I might, someday, become worthy of the families, both families, I had been blessed with. As we finish dinner and move to the living room for dessert, I find myself alone in the kitchen for a moment. Through the doorway, I can see them all, my complicated, fractured, healing family. Rebecca helping David with his adaptive tablet, Sarah and Emma arranging dessert plates, Michael showing David something on his phone, both of them laughing. The scene blurs as tears fill my eyes. Not tears of regret, though those still come sometimes. Not tears of guilt, though that remains a companion, but tears of wonder, of gratitude, that after everything, after my worst mistakes, my greatest failures, my most shameful choices, there could be this. Not forgiveness exactly, but grace, second chances, the possibility of making amends. Have you ever stood at the edge of your greatest mistake and been offered a path back? Not to erase what was done, nothing can do that. But to build something new from the ruins? I have. I'm standing on that path now, walking it, step by difficult step. Some days moving forward, some days sliding back. But walking it nonetheless. The path back isn't through denial. It's not through running away. It's through turning around, facing what you've done, and saying, yes, I did this. I caused this harm, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to make it right. Not because you expect forgiveness, not because you deserve it, but because it's the only way to become the person you should have been all along. What mistake are you running from today? What truth are you hiding from? From others, from yourself? What would happen if you stopped running? If you turned and faced it? I won't tell you it's easy. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. Harder than changing my name, starting over, building a new life. Because those things, as difficult as they seemed at the time, were just more running, more hiding, more denial. The real challenge is standing still, facing what you've done, opening yourself to the consequences, whatever they might be. Some wounds can't be healed. Some bridges can't be rebuilt. Some forgiveness will never come. But some can. Some will, if you're brave enough to try. If there's someone from your past you've lost touch with, someone you've hurt, someone you've abandoned, what's stopping you from reaching out? Not with expectations, not with demands, but with truth, with accountability, with the simple admission, I was wrong, I'm sorry. I want to make amends if you'll let me. The worst they can say is no. And even that, even rejection, is better than the limbo of never knowing, never trying. I know this now. I wish I'd known it 15 years ago, when I chose to run rather than face what I'd done. But I know it now. And so I ask you, what secret are you carrying? What mistake are you hiding from? What relationship have you abandoned because facing it was too painful, too difficult, too shameful? What would happen if you stopped running today? You might lose everything. Or you might find something you never expected. Not forgiveness, perhaps, but connection. Not absolution, but understanding. Not a clean slate, but a new page. You'll never know until you try. I'm still trying. Every day. Some days succeeding, some days failing. But trying. Will you join me? Will you take that first, terrifying step toward the truth of your own life? The path is there. It's always been there, waiting for you to find the courage to walk it. If my story has touched something in you, let me know. Write truth in the comments. Share this with someone who might need to hear it. Subscribe if you want to follow our ongoing journey, the messy, difficult, beautiful work of rebuilding what was broken. Because some stories don't end, they just change direction. And this one, my story, our story, is still being written. One truth at a time,